Okay, guys, today's lesson is going to be on reflections, chapter 2.2 in your book, Reflections. So, as we went over in a previous class, here are the rules for a reflection. The more you could remember them, the easier it is to do the problems and to understand what's happening. Um, to reflect over the x and the y axis, remember these two rules, you can memorize them together. To reflect over the x and the y axis, change the other letter to its opposite sign. So if you reflect over the x axis, I got to change y, the y coordinate, to its opposite sign. And if I reflect over the y axis, I have to change the x coordinate to its opposite sign. And then to reflect over the line y equals x, the coordinates are going to be y comma x. So to reflect over the line y equals x, the coordinates become y comma x. And when you reflect over the line y equals negative x, since that adds a negative sign, then you could just think about it as it's the same as this one, but you also got to add negative signs. So to reflect over the line y equals negative x, the coordinates become negative y, negative x. And to refresh your memory, again, these lines, you should have it memorized what they look like, all right? So the blue line is y equals x. It's a diagonal line that goes from the bottom left to the top right. And the red line is y equals negative x. It's also a diagonal line that goes from the top left to the bottom right. All right, so if you have those memorized, it'll help you understand easier and quicker when you have problems that involve reflecting over those lines. So let's look at our first examples. Now in your homework assignment today, you're not actually going to have to graph. Okay, what you're going to have to do for everything is just pick the correct picture. So the homework should be pretty easy. However, if you have intensive math, there are definitely IXL assignments in there where you literally have to graph the points. And when we get to the exam, you will most likely have questions that require you to get the exact coordinates. So it is important to know how to do it, and it's not difficult. Okay, so let's look at our first example here, number 9. They're giving us the coordinates of the pre-image, and they want us to reflect it over the x-axis. Okay, so if you look at the rule to refresh your memory, to reflect over the x-axis, I got to change all the y coordinates to their opposite sign. So a way that I could do this quickly is underneath here, just write the coordinates for the image, all right, where I just take the y coordinates, all the y coordinates, and change them to the opposite sign. All right, so I'm just changing all the y coordinates to the opposite. And v prime will be at -2, -4. Okay, now the only thing left to do is to graph the two shapes. All right, so I'm going to graph the pre-image in blue. That's the coordinates that they gave us. Okay, so S is at 3, +4. T is at 3, +1. U is at -2, +1. And V is at -2, +4. So there we have a rectangle. That is my pre-image. Okay, and now in red, let's do the image using the new coordinates there. So S prime is going to be at +3, -4. T prime is going to be at +3, -1. U prime is at -2, -1. And V prime is at -2, -4. And connect the dots. And that's it. There's my reflection. Let's do the same thing now with number 10. Okay, so in number 10, they want us to reflect over the line y equals -x. Okay, so we know from our rule that when you reflect over y equals -x, the coordinates switch places, and you also have to make them the opposite sign. So the xy coordinates become -y, comma -x. Okay, so again, a quick way to do it is I could just write underneath here, a prime. The coordinates switch places, and they gotta switch to the opposite sign. So this A prime is going to become positive 2, positive 4. B prime is going to become positive 1, positive 1. And C prime is going to become positive 4, positive 1. Okay, now let me graph in blue the pre-image. So A is at negative 4, negative 2. B is at negative 1, negative 1. And C is at negative 1, negative 4. Okay, now in red, and again, this is being reflected over the line y equals negative x, which is a diagonal line going like this. All right, so now in red, I'm going to do the image. So A prime is at positive 2, positive 4. B prime is at 1, comma 1. And C prime is at 4, comma 1. And there's my answer after a reflection across the line, y equals negative x. Okay, and those are the answers from the book, so you can see it a little more clearly. I'll make sure to upload that with the PowerPoint for this lesson. Okay, from here, this is basically the same thing. I'm going to choose a few random examples. Okay, so let's start off with, how about let's do number 10, which is asking us to reflect over the y-axis, all right? Number 10, which is asking us to reflect over the y-axis. Okay, so underneath the coordinates for the pre-image, I'm going to write the coordinates for the image. Okay, now I put the rules here just so that we could look at them easily while looking at these examples. But again, try to have them memorized as much as you can. Okay, so to reflect across the y-axis, I got to change the x to its opposite sign. Because the trick is, if I'm reflecting over x or y-axis, change the other letter to its opposite sign. So to reflect over the y-axis, I'm going to change the x to its opposite sign. Okay, so for A prime, the new coordinates are going to be positive 3, negative 3. For B prime, the new coordinates are going to be negative 1, positive 3. And for C prime, it's going to be negative 3, negative 1. Okay, now in blue, I'm going to go ahead and first graph the pre-image. Okay, so the pre-image is A is at negative 3, negative 3. Here's A. B is at positive 1, positive 3. And C is at positive 3, negative 1. All right, let me try to connect those dots as straight as I can. All right, that one was pretty good. Okay, now notice something. Okay, we're going to reflect this over the y-axis. That means this point of the triangle is going to be on the right, and this part of the triangle is going to be on the left. All right? All right, so now let me change to red, and I'll graph the image in red. So A prime is going to be at positive 3, negative 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so here's A prime. B prime is going to be at negative 1, positive 3. And C prime is going to be at negative 3, negative 1. Okay, so there's my reflection over the C. I'm sorry, over the C. Reflection over the y-axis. Okay, reflection over the y-axis. Let's look at. We already did one like number 11. So instead of reflecting over y equals negative x, let me do number 12 because that one we're reflecting over y equals x, which is more or less the same thing, but just to look at one that's different. And then after number 12, we'll move on to a different type of question. All right, so in number 12, okay, so the rule when you reflect over y equals x is right here. The coordinates simply switch places. So x comma y becomes y comma x. Okay? So let me just do that for all the coordinates. I'm going to write it underneath it. So, all right, so the coordinates switch places. So d prime is going to be at 1 comma negative 1. E prime is going to be at 2 comma 3. F prime is going to be at negative 1, positive 4. And G prime is going to be at negative 3, negative 1. Okay, I try to, whenever I do this, no matter how you write it, try to keep the information close to each other so that I could easily compare the two, and that helps me to avoid making mistakes, all right? Okay, so let me first graph the pre-image. So D is at negative 1, positive 1. Here's D. E is at positive 3, positive 2. F is at positive 4, negative 1. And G is at negative 1 and negative 3. Again, in the homework for today, you're just going to have to pick the right picture. So it's actually pretty simple. And the answer should be pretty obvious. However, it's important to know how to get the right coordinates because this will show up on the exam and it will show up in a couple of lessons from now. Because a couple of lessons from now, we're going to have one where they combine everything, where they throw everything at you, including multiple transformations in one question. Like first do a reflection, then do a rotation, then do a translation. It's going to get, I mean, nothing to be afraid of. You guys will be able to handle it, but they're gonna combine multiple transformations in one problem very soon. Okay, now let me graph the image, the coordinates that are in red. So D prime is at positive 1, negative 1. Okay, E prime is at positive 2, positive 3. Positive 2, positive 3 is E prime. F prime is at negative 1, positive 4. And G prime is at negative 3, negative 1. Okay, now let me try to connect those. Okay, my picture is not, even though I put the points in the right place, my picture is not the prettiest. Okay, I'm gonna show you the answer from the book, which should be easier to visualize. But before I do that, let me just draw as best as I can the line y equals x to help you better visualize, because I can see how that one would look a little confusing to some of you. All right, so remember the line y equals x is this. Let me draw the dots and then I'll connect the dots. The line y equals x is this. It's not necessary to draw this line. I'm just drawing it so you could better visualize what's happening. Okay, so that's what we're reflecting over. All right, hopefully I didn't make any mistakes here. Let's look at the answer from the book. And yeah, it's pretty much, it already erased what I drew, but it's pretty much exactly as I had it. Okay, again, these answers, these examples will be uploaded to the Microsoft Teams webpage, all right? So if you need any additional examples, you could go there to check them out. Okay, let's move on to the next type of problem, okay? Now listen, this type of problem, I'm not going to cover in detail because for right now, all you got to know is what the picture is going to look like, because you're not going to have to physically come up, you're not going to have to actually figure out the coordinates for this type of reflection. Okay, notice that in this type of reflection, it's not over the line y equals x or y equals negative x or over the x or y axis. It's over a random line. Okay, here you're just reflecting across line L. Notice that there's no x or y axis in this picture. It's just basically, for lack of a better term, it's a random line that they're throwing at you, and you got to reflect this to the other side. Okay, now there is an exact way to come up with the coordinates, but I'm not gonna go over it because it's not necessary now. It's a little bit complicated, so I don't wanna spend time going over something that you don't need to know right now. However, let me just show you the picture because that's what your homework assignment is gonna ask of you. Ignore these lines in the middle. What you gotta look at is this. Well, you got to realize, because the answer is going to look like this. Let me trace it. All right. What you got to realize is that this shape right here is the reflection of the shape that's over here. Ignore these three lines in the middle for now. All right, that's all I want you to realize. When you go to do the homework, the answer should be obvious. All right, there's only going to be one answer that looks even close to the correct answer. All right, so it should be an easy questions. There's only a few like this. But again, I'm not gonna go over how to get the exact coordinates when you reflect over this random line. If necessary in the future, I'll go over it if we need to. But for right now, I don't think it's necessary. All right, over here, same thing. Here's the pre-image. I'm tracing it. I'm trying hopefully to make this a little easier to visualize as far as what it is that you got to be looking out for. Here's the pre-image. So when I reflect it over that black line, this will be the image right here. The dotted lines, they're just putting that to explain how they got the new coordinates, which I'm not going to cover right now. But what I want you to just focus on is the pre-image and the image. As long as that makes sense to you, that's the reflection over this line right here. That's all you need to know for now, okay? Again, the homework assignment, they're just going to give you pictures and you choose the right picture, and it's going to be pretty obvious which the answer is. So I don't want to waste time because this is kind of a little bit complicated going over something that you're not going to need to know for now. All right, so look at these 4 examples. Again, you got to reflect the shapes over line L. I'm just going to display the answer so you can see what it's going to look like. All right, like this should be obvious. You're trying to get the mirror image. So for example, right here, from A to A prime, you know, look where they are. The B is the one that has to be farthest away. Okay, B prime has to be over here. All right, same thing with number 6, number 7, and number 8. If you look at them, it should be obvious why they look the way that they do. So that when you do the homework assignments, it should be a breeze, these questions. All right, we do have one more part that we have to cover. All right, so let's go to that. Okay, what we're going to cover now is they're going to give you problems where they give you the 2 shapes. They give you the pre-image and the image. And you got to draw the exact line of reflection. You got to draw the line of reflection. I'm going to go over how you do that, all right? It involves the midpoint formula, which we went over on our first lesson that we did for this year, okay? If you forgot the midpoint formula, I'll write it up here. Even though it says it here, I'll write it up here, maybe in a way that's easier to understand. So midpoint formula. Okay. So remember, to get the midpoint of, if you have 2 points and you're trying to find the point that's exactly between them in the middle, you would add their x coordinates and divide by 2, and add their y coordinates and divide by 2. And that'll give you the x and the y coordinate of the midpoint. So for example, here, let's say we got to get the midpoint between A and A prime. All right? A is located at -3, +3. And A prime is located at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, +5, -1. Okay, so let me change my pen color. To get the midpoint for A and A prime, I would add the x coordinates. Let me put parentheses here. I'm going to add the x coordinates, so -3 + 5 and divided by 2. And I'm going to add the y coordinates, so 3 + -1 divided by 2. Now, to avoid taking up too much space here, let's try to do this mental math. -3 + 5 is going to give me +2, and +2 divided by 2 is +1. Over here, 3 plus -1, that means the same as 3 minus 1. Because if I simplify the positive and the negative, I'm going to get a negative. So 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Okay? So as you can see here, the midpoint between A and A prime is at +1, +1. Okay? They're doing the exact same thing. The midpoint of B and B prime. Let's do this because this example is here. Let me go to the one that does not have everything written out so that we can go over it step by step, all right? But basically, once they found the midpoints between A and A prime, B and B prime, and C and C prime, okay, that allowed them to put the coordinates of the midpoints, and then you just connect them with a line. And that line is the line of reflection. Once you connect them, that's the line of reflection, all right? So let me do an example here. All right, so same type of question, but different problem, all right? All right, so, okay, first I'm going to find, in order to draw the line of reflection in the exact correct place, the first thing I'm going to do is find the midpoint of A prime. The midpoint of A prime. So we got A here, and we got A prime here. All right, the coordinates for A are -3, +3. And the coordinates for A prime are, I sound like a pirate there, are -5 and -1. Hopefully I got a few LOLs out there. All right, so the coordinates for A prime are -5, -1. Okay, so again, the rule is you add the x coordinates and divide by 2, you add the y coordinates and divide by 2. All right, so the coordinates for A, the x coordinates for A and A prime would be -3 plus parentheses -5. Okay, and just to, before we go on to the y, let's just solve that right now, okay? So -3 plus -5 is going to give you -8. Okay, just to make sure we're on the same page, -3 plus -5, okay? I mean, if you get that equals -8, great. If you don't, I would suggest thinking about it as you simplify those two signs and you're going to get -3 minus 5. I think that's possibly easier to understand, in my opinion. All right, so just imagine a number line for the people that need it. Okay, whenever you subtract 5 from any number, you got to go to the left on a number line. Subtracting 5 from any number means you go to the left 5 times on the number line. However, you're starting at -3. All right, so if I go 5 units to the left, the numbers are going up, -4, -5, -6, etc. So you end up adding the two numbers and the answer stays negative. So this will be -8 divided by 2. And -8 divided by 2 is -4. All right, now let's do the same thing with the y coordinates. The y coordinates are +3 over here and -1 over here. All right, so I got to add +3 plus -1. The plus and the minus become a negative sign. So this is 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. All right, so there's my first answer. All right, now let's do the same thing with to find the midpoint of B prime. All right, so B right here is located at +2, +3, and B prime over here is located at -2, -5. All right, so I'm going to do the same process. First, I add the x coordinates. All right, so 2 plus -2. 2 plus -2, that plus and minus become a minus. So 2 minus 2 is 0. And 0 divided by any number is going to always be 0. All right, now let's do the same thing with the y coordinates. Okay, I got to add 3 plus -5. 3 plus -5. That plus and that negative become a negative. So that's 3 minus 5. 3 minus 5 is -2. -2 divided by 2 will give you -1. Okay, last one. We got to find the midpoint of C prime. Okay, so C is over here. And the coordinates are +5, -1. And C prime is right here. And the coordinates are +3, -5. Okay, so first I add the x coordinates of C and C prime. So up here I'm going to put 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the y coordinates. Negative 1 plus negative 5. Negative 1 plus parentheses negative 5. Again, when I simplify these two signs, I'm going to get negative 1 minus 5. Whenever I subtract 5, I go to the left 5 times on a number line. However, keep in mind, you're starting at negative 1. So when you go to the left 5 times, the numbers are going negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. So you end up adding the numbers and the answer will stay negative. Okay, so negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. Okay, now let me plot these three midpoints. Hopefully I did not make a mistake here. Let's see, what color should I use? Some of these colors you don't see too well, that's why I gotta think about it. Let's just use black. Okay, so the midpoint of A prime is at negative 4, positive 1. That looks about right. The midpoint of B prime is at 0, negative 1. And the midpoint of C prime is 4, negative 6. Did I make a mistake here? Let me just check to make sure. 5, negative 1. That one's right. Okay, and C prime is located at 3, negative 5. That's right. I added them. Negative 1 plus negative. Yeah, I did make a mistake here. I made a mistake here, guys. Hopefully you caught that before I did. Okay, but negative 6, I forgot to divide it by 2. This should be negative 3. Sorry about that. I'm too far in the video to go back, so we're just going to leave this. All right, so this one should be at positive 4, negative 3. So look, personally, I like to leave mistakes and show you guys that I make mistakes sometimes so that you guys could see how you could figure out that I made a mistake, all right? What I had originally put was 4 comma negative 6, and that doesn't even fit there. So that should tell me, wait, I probably made a mistake. All right. Plus, not to mention, even if it did fit there, it's totally wouldn't fall in line with these 2 points. Okay. So positive 4, negative 3 is going to be right here, and now you could see that it does look correct. All right. Now I just connect those dots, and I didn't do a good job of that, but that should have been a better line. But that would be my line of reflection. Okay. That would be my line of reflection. Let's look at the answer from the book, which is a lot easier to see, the line of reflection. I'm going to do one more example, guys. One more example. Okay, so let's look at number 13 because it obviously looks a little bit more interesting than number 12. So let's look at number 13. This will be the last example, guys. I don't want to take up too much time so you guys have time to work on the assignment. Okay, so also this one's a little different because I got to write out the coordinates. So let's do that first. What color should I use? Let's use for the pre-image. Okay, blue. All right, so actually, should I do this way? Yeah, let's do it this way. A is at positive 4, positive 7, right? And you know what? I'm just gonna do A and A prime first. Let's do it that way. A and A prime, all right? Because that's the way we find out the midpoint. All right, so A prime is at positive 6, positive 3. Positive 6, positive 3. Okay? So I'm going to find the midpoint. So remember, for the midpoint, let me label them in case anybody's still like not really getting it. Okay, you could think about it like this. Like, let's make this one x1, y1, x2, y2. This is something that you don't have to write this. If you get it, you just don't bother writing it. Just do it. You could even do it mental math, to be honest with you, on most of these cases. But just for the people that maybe are still not 100% getting it. And let me write the midpoint formula up here as well. Midpoint. That's what I'm going to do for all three midpoints that I'm about to find. Okay, so now, all right, so for the midpoint of A prime, let me write it like this, I guess. All right, the midpoint is going to be, I had 4 plus 6. which is going to give me 10. 4 plus 6 and divided by 2. Okay, and for the y, I'm going to do 7 plus 3 and divided by 2. All right, so 10 divided by 2 is 5. And 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 divided by 2 is also 5. So the midpoint of A prime is going to be located at 5, comma 5 right there. That's the midpoint. Okay, let's do B prime over here. B is located at positive 3, negative 1. Positive 3, negative 1. And B prime is located at negative 1, positive 7. Negative 1, positive 7. All right? Okay, so to get the midpoint, I'm going to add 3 plus negative 1. 3 plus negative 1 divided by 2. And negative 1 plus 7 divided by 2. All right, so 3 plus negative 1 is the same as 3 minus 1. So that's going to give me 2 divided by 2. Negative 1 plus 7 is going to give me 6. All right, so 6 divided by 2. So my coordinates there are going to be 1, comma 3. All right, so the midpoint of B prime is at positive 1, positive 3. Okay, almost done. All right, now C is located at, and sorry if this is getting a bit messy, but C is located at 2, comma 6. And C prime is located, C prime is right here. All right, positive 4, positive 2. So the midpoint, add 2 plus 4 and divide by 2 for the x coordinates, and for the y coordinates, 6 plus 2 and divide by 2. That's a 2 over here. Okay, so the midpoint for C prime is going to be 6 divided by 2, which is 3. And 6 plus 2 is 8, so 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So it should be at 3, positive 4. 3 positive 4 is right there. So I got my 3 dots, I connect them, and there's my line of reflection. All right. Again, for today's assignment, you're just going to have to pick the correct picture, which is going to be pretty easy, to be honest with you. But there's a good chance that on an exam or on a future lesson, you're going to have to actually work these out. All right, so it's important to understand them. Let me display the answers just so you can see what the line of reflections look like for both of these. Oh, I'm sorry. There you go. All right, so there's the line of reflection. That's the one I just did. This one I didn't do, but as you can see, like with a picture, if you just got to choose which picture is correct, it's pretty simple. And here's the work worked out for you. I'll upload this to our Microsoft Teams webpage. Okay, 4 final examples where you got to draw the line of reflection. I'm not going to do them. The answers will be uploaded to Microsoft Teams. Okay, but just so you could see where the line of reflection lies. All right, so that concludes today's lesson. Your assignment for today is already in the student portal. It's section 2.2. All right, so you can get started on it now, and it's due by 6 a.m. the next day that you have my class.